So you started playing at a church, or you just started your own studio and you want to learn a little bit about the acoustic guitar, this is the video for you. I had one of my good friends, Freddy DeMarco, spend some of his time. It's a little longer video, but everything is worth listening to, and it will give you technique to make this this instrument really shine in a mix. So thanks, Freddy. Here we go. I'm sitting here with a good friend of mine, Freddy DeMarco. Cheers.
We're talking a little bit about recording and live and pertaining to acoustic guitar. That give you a lot of anomalies you overcome, little things that you think it's going great when you listen to the acoustic back instead of getting beautiful rich tones,
Right.
getting a lot of clanky stuff and all that. And we were talking about things I do to combat that live and in the studio, and you thought, wow, we should make a video like that.
Give them your background, man. How long you been playing guitar?
Well, I got the Roy Clark songbook last week, and I started it, and I was able to play in about, I'm lying, actually about 12 days, and then I was able to do, and after 13 days, it taught you how to go, and so, no, actually, no, I've been playing my whole life, and, I've been in music, production, bands, all kinds of things. I could go on for quite a bit. Just working in a lot of studio settings and live settings with acoustic guitar. One of the biggest things would be if you're not playing acoustic a lot and you're an electric player and own an acoustic, you think you're going to come into a studio, into a live setting, just grab the acoustic and play it. And it really is a different instrument once you're actually recording it. When you're actually tracking something and you're going to hear clunk notes and you're going to hear a struggle in your playing, a lot of it's just, playing acoustic a lot, but knowing what to practice and what to work for. And a lot of bass as well, and bass the same thing. If you're not playing bass a lot, I'd have to amp up knowing, well, I'm going to be doing a bass clinic. Being a electric guitarist, I did clinics for, Marshall, Vox, Black Star. Then if I have to do one, for example, I worked for Ashdown for a little while. We carried that, and then Spectre. I'd have to amp up on the bass. I just play in the studio here and there, and I'm not really playing a lot of high-end technique. Well, acoustic was 10 times worse than that. When I worked for Korg USA at the NAMM show, they took on the Cole Clark guitars out of Australia, awesome guitars, and they said I'd be doing a clinic on that. So I amped up on all that. I started playing not just acoustic once in a while for a track in the studio. I started getting my chops together. And I think that's probably one of the big misconceptions we talked about, is to prepare for it.
You were talking about, just technique. First and foremost, you've went everything from picks to the way you're strumming to, all kinds of stuff, man. I mean, you just jump in wherever you want to. And we're talking from like churches, like guys that play at the church to guys that just want to learn about this instrument and realize, the recording aspect of it and how to get the best sound out of it.
Yeah, one of the things with the technique would be, brush stroking the strings. So on an electric, if you hit it harder or hit it lighter, it does affect it, but you really wouldn't ruin the sound necessarily. Where And this relates to like cymbals in a studio setting. A lot of times a real hard hitter live, you have to tell them to hit lighter, because you could peak out the cymbal to a point where it's not the sweet spot. Same with a bass. If you're hitting a bass string real hard, you could kill it. Same with the guitar. So if I'm brush stroking the string like this, and I'm playing with a super thick pick, like a gypsy jazz type pick, because it makes it a lot easier for the speed picking and all that. And thing's as hard as a rock, and it's thick. So when your upstrokes happen, the pick's thicker. You don't have to work as hard to hit a back pick on a string. So first of all, I'm going to get rid of that and go with a lighter string. So just listen before we even talk about the technique. Hear that? I'm playing hard on a very heavy pick. It's a bit clanky. Okay. Now, with the whole band playing, that wouldn't be the most terrible thing. But compared to a brush stroke with the same pick, I'm not digging in. I'm letting the hand be relaxed, and I'm brushing over the string. So if I take a lighter pick and do that, way more forgiving. It's not fretting out. It's not overdoing the note where the frets are then being hit, the strings vibrating so fast up and down at that point that it's actually fretting out against the fret like this. Undesirable. And it sounds struggle.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of acoustic guitar players are afraid of bar chords. And the bar chords, when they play them on electric, are no problem. But on acoustic, it's very easy to get that same problem like this. What you want is so you got to practice that left hand. You're playing 12, 13 gauge strings here, you know, as compared to a 9 gauge on an electric, which is much lighter. Yeah. That wrist is going to start wearing out right here. So let's say you're a guy that's going to the studio, you're in the rock band. Oh, we want to do the intro on acoustic guitar, and I'm going to play a track all the way through. The first thing I ask them, are you playing acoustic? Are your acoustic chops up? No worry. It's no problem. They're the same 6 strings. How hard can it be? Well, you start wearing out, and these clear chords start doing this. Especially if acoustic chops aren't there. So the thing is play it 20 minutes a day. You want to double check. Every one of those notes are ringing. So the brush stroke of the right hand and a real clean left hand, that's pretty much the technique you want to look for. Not and the wearing out, left hand's wearing out and the right hand's clunking too much. So you have to really finesse it and listen, put yourself in the listener's perspective. See, I would work so hard on the fast stuff and all that kind of stuff that I was thinking of the playing, put yourself in the listener's seat, and boy, they want to hear a nice, rich sound. Now, keep in mind, I'm just playing. I got a teeny little 4-inch practice amp I'm going through for a little bit of ambience, and we're just recording right through an iPad.
Right,
There's
right.
no a board or anything here. So this is as raw as you're pretty much going to get it. And even that, I'm trying to make an evenness. I'm trying to be even between the strings, not have my higher strings come out louder, my lower strings come out louder. You want to be even because the engineer gets the track and they hear a lot of this. They're not hearing that. They're like, wait, where's my whole chord?
Well,
and a lot of it does boil down to the.
So when we were on the phone, it's what I see is trying to create excitement, they start strumming harder. Or if they're trying to create calm, they start slowing down their tempo.
I think that's a huge thing for all musicians and instrumentalists and even voiceover people regarding recording.
Yeah.
So for voiceover, we know simply just doing commercials that we've done with people, and we call a non-professional voiceover person, we ask them, can we pick up the tempo a little bit? And all of a sudden their voice goes up. Or can we slow the tempo and their voice starts going lower? Well, that's just a natural tendency the brain's going to double up on. So with the instrument, of course, when you're trying to increase tempo, you're probably going to hit harder. You have to control that. That's a technique in itself. And when you're playing lighter, you have a tendency to maybe drag or slow down. What I tell my students is just practice to a metronome and practice at different levels, different dynamic levels. Make sure you're not rushing when you're playing louder. But what does happen is, they start hitting so hard that, again, live, it's a little more forgiving, and especially if you're not recording. It blows by people live, but if you're going to go mix a live thing, I think you were talking about that. I was assuming, the live players, because it's a faster tempo tune and a more of a barn burner, they're picking it up, and it's starting to clank, and they're hitting too hard. So it's the control, and you practice that. So, for example, if I were doing more of a bluegrass mountain strum, when I go faster, I want that same pressure. Not get so violent, and then after a while, it sounds struggle. And the other thing is to keep the hands relaxed so the blood flow keeps going. And when you tense up over a few seconds, all of a sudden you can't keep going. Where if you're relaxed, you could keep this all day long, and it never wears out. A down upstroke. And the other thing would be economy of motion. Don't move more than you need to. Just do what you need. See, I'm just staying right there. And I'm staying relaxed so I could keep that going.
Yeah.
If I bring a heavier pick and want an alternate pick, and keep that going. It should never wear out. The reason someone would wear out is because they're going to tense up and do this, and now they're running out of steam because they're restricting the blood flow. So practice slow. Make sure you have everything together slowly, and all you're doing when you play fast is moving fast and slow. Look for no extra movement. You don't want to be leaving the instrument like this. Stay right there. And get that attack even, and then when you go faster and faster, you're not going to wear out.
Gotcha.
Also, you look at your angle of your pick. You don't want to fish hook it and start getting snagged. You have to have your pick angled so it's comfortable. And again, for the strumming, the brush stroking of the strings makes you play vigorous, but I'm not digging in too much. I'm brushing over them. So I'm literally starting down, down, and the higher strings, down, up, down, up, down, 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 up, down. And when I go fast, I want to make sure I'm not going.
Yeah.
Now, so as you increase your dynamics, try not to rush. And when you decrease your dynamics, get softer, try not to drag. And the best way would be sitting with a metronome and recording yourself so you really hear, oh boy, I thought I was a lot cleaner. That's coming out a lot more clacky and note sounding. Not so much the rhythm sometimes, but the notes sound like they're struggling to come out. The other thing is the action of the guitar. See, this isn't very forgiving. I got this. It's pretty hard to play. If you look at the distance from the strings to the frets. So in a recording studio, a lot of people think they want to lower the action or tweak the neck so it's low, so it's easier to play, but things are going to fret out and be unusable. In fact, if a string up top hits a fret, it can bring out an artificial harmonic that's not even in key to the song.
Let me ask you this. Like, you've taught a lot. Some people that I've come across in the studio, they're not advanced players. I mean, what are you saying to them if they're going to focus on a few things? What would be like maybe one or two things like to make sure you have in check? And obviously we're talking about playing too. We're talking about practicing. I know you don't learn how to play guitar in one lesson. I get that. You know what I mean? But where would you start? Is that a good question or is that an unfair question?
Not an unfair question. So the first thing would be, again, I would say the most important thing is practice slow because you can analyze and hear if you're getting string buzzing. The other problem that a lot of players in the beginning, what happens is they can't shift chords clean from here to here. It's not seamless. They do it a typewriter thing where it's one finger at a time. And then you get to the point where you just stamp them out. Well, when you stamp them out, you can be missing things. So what happens is they're losing time and struggling with time because of the technique not being able to switch chords cleanly. Notice how all my fingers are going down like I'm like a
at the same time. Yeah.
Right, rather than a typewriter individually. So that, and I would do that very slow to make sure you're not getting this. And arpeggiate the notes. When I say arpeggiate, I mean arpeggiate the chords. Arpeggiating means the notes individually. Because you're going to hear your dead spots. And you're getting a dead spot because a finger that's supposed to clear the string isn't clearing an open string.
Okay.
Or you're not pressing hard enough, or you're too much on top of the fret, or too far behind the fret. So you're supposed to be just behind the fret, just behind it, pressing on the fingertips with curved finger joints. The exception being if you're going to bar and one finger covering more than one string. But typically, you're playing on the fingertips, and my elbow is into my body. Watch what happens to this hand when my elbow goes into the body. Notice all these fingers are pulling down, causing the one to run into the other strings. Now, when that elbow comes into the body and the thumb goes behind the neck, watch what happens to this hand. All of a sudden, it stands up and I get clearance with the strings. So you want that proper technique, and then you want to practice going from chord to chord very slow and arpeggiate it. Then put a click track on and see if you could stay with the click track. And if you can't, you're starting to mute, you're not ready to move on. So that's the first thing. The right hand, we talked about that. You want to brush stroke most of the time. We talked about accenting and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
In a live setting, you'll get away with more accenting. I can't tell you how many times in the studio, when I'm producing or I've had producers tell me, don't worry so much about the feeling. It's going to be there through the song. You give it feeling, but don't try to get something like this where you're going. punch it out so much. Give it less than you think, because it's going to make it really erratic. And if you know about recording and you see wave files, you'll see that wave file spike. It's going to force the engineer to compress the thing, and you're going to ruin the tone by compressing it too much. So you want to be your own compressor, your own dynamic, and your own engineer, really. And you want to make it so if I'm going to play a line that's going, let's just say, now I'm following a vocalist, I might want to follow some melody that'll make me want to do this. Put my feeling, they say to put in it, but I'm really lunging at that. And then with a shaker, you go, you wouldn't go shika the whole time. You kind of keep it more even. You put less in it, and the ensemble should be helping that out, where you're kind of keeping more of an even thing. More times than not, you're going to want to be in the background, or even if you're in the forefront, you're going to want to be more thinking of yourself as a timekeeper and keeping it a little more even, maybe with a subtle accent here and there. And I'm talking like this. As opposed to this. But it's still going to be better in the mix if you're not spiking all those.
Well, it crowds the mix too. As I was listening to you play that second one, I mean, you're getting a lot more of the mix is taken up with that too. I mean, you know what I mean? Of that playing style, depending on the mix and the music and obviously the compression and all that good stuff.
And I'm talking about working with the ensemble most of the time. Now, a lot of times, like if you listen to the beginning of Pinball Wizard by, I don't want to play it so we get this shut down or anything.
Right.
But at the beginning of that tune, he's wanking on it, and it is giving a lot of that sound, but it worked in that song.
Yeah, there's always a roll, and you can stretch the roll. I get what you're saying. I think people get what you're saying. Yeah, you might be doing it for effect. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're in the ensemble and you're putting all these stabs that you think should be there, it may not agree with other people's accents. And then again, if you're only one person backing up a singer, you wouldn't be disagreeing with other people's rhythms, but you might be standing out too much and jabbing. Just what I'm trying to say is it took me a while early on to realize, wow, don't put as much into it as you're totally feeling it. So let's say I'm going to do more even keel, but I am going to add some accents. That would be more like this for that same part. All I did is I did a quick down up going to the C chord. From the D chord to the C chord, I went just to give it a little bit of style, but I'm not through the whole thing doing. You know, that's crazy. And maybe an intro I do something like that with just the music.
Well, then that depends on the singer and everything else too. I mean, like if a guy's really belting it out, you might want to give it some of that. You know what I mean?
I would agree with that. Yeah.
How about basic tracking? How about just basically tracking this thing? What are you looking for?
Okay, so on your settings, most acoustic guitars are going to have an EQ. I would not be boosting mid-range. I try to get the mid-range out of there because you're trying to get the pick cluck. Why would you poke mid-range at that when that's the guitar's pick is going to already do that? So I try to keep it smoother. I also will move where I want to go. If I want it more twangier, I'm down here. If I want it rich and thick, I want it here. If I want it accompany, sometimes I accompany over here. Okay, so I'm looking for it to be smooth. Typically, so I'm thinking typically when they're asking for an acoustic, they want an acoustic strumming. Every now and then not, but for basically, I'm looking for that smoothness, and I'm looking for evenness. Musicality, though, the timing and all that, that's first and foremost. But let's say you're good there, you can play the tune. I'm looking for an even tone. So I want to usually roll off mids. I don't want too much bright in there, so I won't EQ too much treble in if I'm going direct. I want to back that off. You could always do that on the board or do that later. If you're recording, now you had mentioned recording.
Yeah, so and live too.
Live, I let it misbehave a little bit more. Because live, we're not going to be able to fix it in the mix, and I want to have enough raw acoustic there, but still, I don't want it honky and mid-rangey, unless I'm doing more of like a Eric Clapton.
Yeah, it's a tone. You're doing it as tone.
and I want it to cut through. But normally I'm going to go more for this. Smoother. I like a silky high, but I EQ the high on the guitar so it's not going to be too brassy.
Mm-hmm.
I probably will hit a little harder live. I'm talking just live right now. The low end, you got to watch the boomy low end, and you may want to consider one of these. This goes into the sound hole, and it helps eliminate feedback. Gotcha. And you got to watch around 80 hertz and stuff like that. A low end will still creeping up on you to try, because you're trying to get the richness out of the instrument. So try to do as much as you can with the pick, the choosing of the proper pick, and where you're strumming on the guitar. So I'm going to get a more rich sound here. But know when you're going direct, you're not going to have any room sound, or you're not going to have a diaphragm of a microphone to play into. It's not very forgiving. It's going right in there, and what you give it, you get. So I would say you're actually thinking of brush stroking more often, and you're thinking of maybe, I wouldn't say more of a muted sound, but not too accentuated boomy lows and not too many shrill highs. But then again, you don't want too much mid-range. So if I were to look at an EQ on an acoustic, very rarely am I picturing it in a live setting boosting anything. I'm thinking of subtracting frequencies out of it.
That's
so
good.
It stays smooth and it fits in, and it's not too honky for a vocalist to sound natural. In the recording aspect of it, I get it, so it's finished. I like to hear it in my headphones, but the acoustic itself, I'm not thinking fix it in the mix. If it's tinty, real tinny and clacky, you're probably going to be fighting frequencies that you need. So you're going to then try to EQ frequencies out later, and that's going to take some of the tone away. So you kind of want to get it up front. And again, see if I could, there's that gypsy pick. Now here
which is the hard one, right? Super hard.
And this one that's more medium. To me, and the material on this plastic one. But here's a nylon, real thin nylon pick. See, it's not bringing out the highs as much, so now the lows that I'm missing are more balanced with the highs. That should be warmer.
That's great. Yeah.
And then when you're moving around with chords and stuff, you're getting a lot of this.
Oh, yeah.
When I was recording this back when I lived in Los Angeles, we were in a studio, and I used to think that was, when I was younger, he said that was a cool sound, because on a Jim Croce album or something else, you would actually hear that. And it was cool because it was natural. But now with the way they compress things and bring things so forward, a real quick tip for that is a little water glass. You just take a water glass and dip your hands in the water a little bit, and it will soften the calluses, and you won't have as much of this. It will make it so when you glide over the strings, because again, you're trying to stay seamless in a lot of cases. And if I have to move around, hear that?
Yeah.
When I went, it's in there a little bit. I would just take some water, and if I were still getting it, I would use my music knowledge. Instead of going to this A chord, maybe I want to go to this A chord. One close by. As opposed to... Now that way to avoid it, I lifted the string. I lifted off the string. Hear that when I leave it? But I'm doing it so quick. And that song, it might be fine, but an engineer or a producer more so might say, can't we connect those chords? Why is there a little pause? Well, I'm trying to avoid the thing, and I like the breath at the same time. He may disagree, in which case, if he doesn't need this high note here, I could just play the A down here and move seamless.
Yeah.
See through that. So I'm making choices that way. Then the other way to do it is if they really need it totally unrealistic to what a player can do, I literally will put on it, hopefully we're to a click, and it would work to a click. I would make my first chord, record it, then I'd hear the click, I'd make my second chord, I'd make my third chord, and then my fourth chord, let's say, whatever it might be. Whatever it is. I record them all separately, and then you can just cut and paste those together, and they'll go clean, seamless, and they cut and paste that. I know in the Nashville studios, they're real particular about not hearing any of this. You have to learn to play your licks without anchoring your hand on the guitar.
Yeah.
So if you're anchoring, hey, Miles. Is that Miles?
Yeah, man.
All right. He likes the acoustic.
Yeah, he does.
Usually, when I have the electric, he leaves the room.
You serenade him.
Oh, yeah. But as I'm playing through this stuff, I'm aware of all that ahead of time because it's really cool that if you're a player, the engineer doesn't have to tell you all this
Yeah.
stuff. And then the producer doesn't have to tell you this stuff. If you were coming from, let's say, an engineering standpoint, I think these are all good things to help a guitarist that isn't delivering. And they got the talent, but these little nuances, they've never been under a microscope in a studio. That's why I always say, when they say, oh, I'll just bring an acoustic along. I'm like, wait a second now, though. But do you want me to play, or can someone that plays that do that?
Yeah.
And well, maybe let's practice that, and we'll cut that down the road, not the first day. 2 weeks of practicing the stuff, come back, and we'll drop the acoustic last.
Yeah, man, this is highly, highly, highly important information, And I know you're just scratching the surface.
But I would also not forget what I said earlier. Don't make that electric guy is going to try to make that acoustic, make the acoustics have real low strings like his electric does, and you're going to get. I don't have an example here because even my Martin, the strings are higher than that.
Yeah.
It frets out and it gets a sound like this kind of. Where you need the strings higher so they're pure sounds when you're recording, and you just have to get your technique up the point where you can manage that. The other thing is play within your limits. Why don't try to play something? Maybe your favorite guitarist in the world is phenomenal, and you're trying to keep up with that, and you're really not playing the 6 hours a day that person is.
Yeah, yeah.
But in the studio, it's going to have to come out cleaner. There's only so much you could do in a mix.
You know a lot, and I think people out there, if they want to take it to the next level, are you taking students right now?
Oh, I am always. I take them in person in my hometown, and then I do FaceTime, Zoom, all that stuff. There's something called Teams people are using. And I think it's you could tell people all this in one day, no problem. But it's the training of it, somebody helping you, not kid yourself and things like that, And we're not even talking about soloing at all or any theory. I'm just literally talking about getting through an acoustic part where it's acceptable. It doesn't have to be the greatest thing in the world, but to keep it. I think these basic things we talk about, and to work with people, because sometimes people don't understand. I'm doing everything you say, I'm still not getting it. And when you're in instruction, I could critique it more and discover, well, wait, maybe why, and then, oh, you know what, your technique, you're trying to do everything with the thumb over the neck, now because there are things you want the thumb over the neck for. And to mutant things, but sometimes they don't realize that just a simple one lesson sometimes puts people back on track.
I've just heard you over conversation just say one thing, even when I'm tracking somebody. You go, oh, try this, you know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden it's like life changing for the guy. It's like, wow, that was it. I think a lot of people will get a lot of information out of it. We can put a link. I mean, we can put a link up or something, or they can just send me a message or something if they want to get a hold of you. It's the biggest deal.
I mean, I know when we work on things, every time I send you some, I'm never worried about how it's going to come out. I always know if I do, but I'm trying to do these things for you when I send you a track. I'm trying to make it so you're not battling things. But I will say with the acoustic, there is only so much you can do, because literally if this coming out clunky like this, you're not going to make a string like that sound clear, because I know there's software that takes out buzzing, clicking, clacking, but if the note was never produced, nothing's going to give that note. If a guy's going to play power chords and rock chords like this and not use a capo or something, and you do get that, you get a clanky sound here, and you don't want that. I just find the frequency and try to kill that frequency and suppress that frequency.
Right.
And somehow try to make it work in the mix, and then just make it, back it up as a rhythm.
Right. It's not going to be a main instrument in that way. There's a lot of acoustic stuff that I've definitely mixed, but it's like, these little things go, it's do or die, man, make or break. That's what it is. So you got to get your chops up.
It really does boil down know what to do,
Yeah.
and then put in the time doing it. I'm not going to say any instrument's easier than another, but there are other instruments where you can kind of get around not being that technical with it. And when I'm saying technical, I'm not talking all the alternate picking stuff I'm working on with people. I'm talking literally the technique of basic sounding stuff. I'm so surprised that it just, when you hear it back, it's wow, we couldn't even get two chords going. It's funny, back, they talk a lot about the 80s, that a lot of the drummers on these records that are in the band wouldn't be the drummer on the record, because back then, they weren't cutting and pasting. There wasn't Pro Tools. You needed guys that they could punch you in, but you needed to get through the songs or get through big portions of the songs and stay in time. So a lot of the live guys, the guys in the band, they would be replaced. I think nowadays acoustics get replaced a lot. Said acoustic is that new drum guy that's getting replaced. A lot of times songs, an engineer calls and said, I just need an acoustic. Well, what about the person in the band? And good advice for that. If you do want to not snuff them out and just be honest with it, let them play the whole note thing. So let's say we have a guy that just can't get it all, and they can't get all this playing it through. Let's say we do something like this. We give them 3 tracks we try to get them in. And we say, give one track where you just play for the measure. Let it ring. And whatever. The next track, you would do this. Maybe go. The next track, the third track, I might do this. I hear the dling, bum, bum, then I answer with. Then it goes ding, ding, ding. So what I'm getting is this. But I'm doing it through 3 guitar parts. And I still got that guy on the album. No, he couldn't do exactly what we wanted, but he's not coming to the table with the part. Sometimes we can't even get that, right?
Right.
So what do? I'll do this. I'll go. And we let him do this. And maybe not even this. Maybe he can't even get that in time, but we'll let him do 2 strokes through the measure. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and we mix him in with me. But we're working with people. We want to help people.
Yeah.
We don't want, and we just want to do a nice little touch up to their stuff. And sometimes it ends up being, we have to be the main thing and they're the touch, but we can still include them that way. And
right.
I think that's a way for a producer or an engineer anyway to approach a session like that.
Yeah. And for the record, everybody out there, Freddie plays on a lot of records that you probably don't even realize it was him playing. Is that fair to say? You played on a lot of records.
For one story that's really bad. This was back years ago, and I just came back to town.
Yeah.
And they're working on a record, and 2 friends of mine, I just happened to come in the studio, and they said, "Hey man, can you replay this record?" I said, "Well, and I was trying to take pride in, let's see if I could learn the whole thing in a night and play." We stayed up all night. I said, "But why would I do that?" And I said, "Well, I know the guitar player. I can't do that." Well, they said, "We're doing it either way. If you want to do it." I said, "All right." So I did it. We never said anything. And I basically replayed rhythm parts. Yeah. Because they weren't in time, or he's bending notes out of key. Like the one take is like this, and the other take on the left speaker is right on. The other one was pulled a little sharp. So it was all over the place. So we replaced all that. And I could remember doing a dual show with that band. And literally, the guitarist says, they're playing the song over the PA, the new album. He says, "Wow, I didn't even realize I sounded that good. I never felt so terrible." I mean, it's a compliment in a sense. And then I wonder if that ever happened to me. If I done something where someone replaced it. But it was a terrible feeling. So my way of doing it is I like to keep it out in the open, and let's just let's let the guy know, because it's going to help him in the long run. Yeah. And it doesn't take that long. If you focus on this stuff, it could be 6 months, it could be 6 weeks down the road, but they're now that person. Yeah. Yeah. Just fix it and do it in a nice way where it doesn't shut their ego down. Yeah. I'll cut it for you, but I'll help you out. So next time you'll cut your own. And he plays everything else. And, just like anything else you do on a sports field. I say as producers and engineers, we take that role, first. And then if necessary, we call in the session guy. You know?
Well, that's what the fun of it is, man. Hey, we can all get better, dude. We can all get better. Oh. Well, I'll end with this. How much do you practice a day?
It varies. I run, I play in that AC/DC tribute. Yeah. So every week, if I know I'm at least running the tunes once, maybe twice, like the show, and everyone said, "Why would you do that?" Because we're not practicing and rehearsing. So to keep the songs going and play each song 3 minutes at a time, play for an hour and a half straight, I play through the tunes just for that reason, not because I still don't have the parts down, but to get the workout. If I'm a runner, I have to run every day. I can't just run, hit this pinnacle, and then 6 months from now join the Olympics. You have to do it every day. So for that reason, then I take time where I'm learning licks offline and different styles of jazz or chicken picking. And I might practice between that, practicing on my own, and then giving lessons. Heck, I could have my guitar in my hands as much as 12 hours a day. I often am in front of a Netflix movie, and I'm practicing my licks the whole time in front of that. Then there'll be maybe another movie. So let's say close to 3-4 hours of just that. Not
Wow.
every single night, but I try to do that to maintain and to progress.
I gotta to ask you this.
Yeah.
Can we all right, because I'm gonna end this video. I think you gave them a lot of content, dude. Can we do a lick of the day?
Lick of the day. I don't have a lick of the day. You kidding me? I got a cool progression of the
All
day.
right.
How's that?
All right.
Taking an A chord in fifth fret, moving that first finger back. Bring it back, and then move the whole chord up. And the whole time I'm playing an open A and an open E on top, so I got a drone in the middle. And then I'll extend my finger. So you got this. You get some real beautiful things out of that.
Wow. That's sweet.
As opposed to some fast lick, I'll show you.
Come on, do one of those before you get out of there.
Oh man!
Come on, do one. You gotta
How about
you gotta flex a little.
Pulp Fiction.
All right.